who's as adamant about his or her position as I am about mine, whom you think is sharp. Seriously, we know that. And another thing, we heard him say that... Hey, Eldorados, I am Larry Elder. This is episode 12 of And Another Thing. I'm laughing because I've got a little glass of water right here next to me. You might remember a couple nights ago, Marco Rubio gave the response to Obama's State of the Union speech. And in the middle of the speech, he leans over and gets a glass of water. Now, I was in the car listening to it on radio, and so I didn't see what happened, but I did hear a little break in the speech. I thought it was odd. I didn't know what happened. I thought maybe he'd lost his place on teleprompter or something. And then I get home and I find out that Wolf Blitzer is speculating that maybe this drink might derail Marco Rubio's presidential prospects if he decides to run for the office in 2016. Really? That's what you got? The guy gave a well-crafted, well-delivered response to the State of the Union speech, and what you got was he got dry mouth and needed a glass of water? I mean, really? At the first and only vice presidential debate, the one that Ryan had with Joe Biden, when Ryan first sat down, the first thing he did was take a drink of water. Do you remember that? No one said a word. So is it okay to take a glass of water in the beginning of a debate because you have dry mouth? It's not okay to give it in the middle of a speech because you have dry mouth? And if you have dry mouth, should you continue speaking even though you can't really speak well because you have dry mouth and you're afraid that if you lean over and get a glass of water, Wolf Blitzer will say you're not qualified to be president of the United States? Okay. I want to say a couple things. I want to talk about Christopher Dorner for a moment. Dorner is the ex-cop, and please don't call him a rogue cop. He's an ex-cop. The LAPD fired his butt. Christopher Dorner is a man who authorities believe has been killed or is dead, maybe by his own hand, at that cabin up near Angeles Oaks here in Los Angeles. He is accused of killing 4 people, 2 of whom are police officers, wounding 2 others. The condition of one of them may turn worse, in which case he may even be guilty of 5 murders by the time you watch this. I'm not sure. Here's what I'm hearing from a lot of people. Well, I don't condone what Dorner did. He killed a bunch of people, and no matter how angry he was at the Board of Rights, which is the review procedure for LAPD, that does not warrant murdering somebody. On the other hand, a lot of people are saying the LAPD is corrupt, they're dishonest, you can't trust them, and there is a systemic problem within the culture of the LAPD, and what Dorner did was to expose this dark underbelly of Los Angeles. Here's my problem. I don't believe Dorner ever should have been on the force in the first place. You look at his record. This guy has been considered to be a problem child by people who were in the academy with him. I've spoken to people who knew him, and they said that he was a bully. He shot himself in the hand during the police academy, something that would get a lot of people disqualified. His field training officer, Teresa Evans, said that he lacked judgment and common sense, and one time he was out in the open, a la Dirty Harry, which is poor field tactics, and she wrote him up. And one time when she wrote him up, the next day he goes to a captain and tells the captain that he observed her kicking a mentally ill suspect, something that he didn't report right away. He reported it 2 weeks later. Anyway, the LAPD said that this guy lied on the training officer, and they fired him. He went to the Board of Rights to argue that he should not have been fired, and it went all the way to court. And this guy ultimately lost. Now, what do I believe really happened? It's hard to say what I believe really happened. All I know is that no matter what happened, no matter how jacked over he was, how do you go out and kill a bunch of innocent people because you're upset that the internal review process with LAPD was flawed? Furthermore, here's what he should have done. I'm a lawyer. You're upset with the LAPD. The LAPD has fired you. Rather than go to civil court to argue that the LAPD used improper procedures, which is a very low bar, what he should have done is to sue under a pro-whistleblower statute. That way you would have been protected. There would have been an investigation into whether or not your allegations were accurate, and you would have had a far greater chance of prevailing than the way you did it. So I don't know who advised this guy as to what kind of judicial procedure he ought to take, but whatever advice he got, it was a bad advice. Here's the other problem that I have, and this is a much more bigger question. I spoke to somebody within the LAPD yesterday, and everybody confirms this. Los Angeles operated for a long time under what's called a federal consent decree. I just had a Marco Rubio moment. Okay, Jerry from Monrovia. You were asked a question about Ronald Reagan, and I too had a question regarding Reagan. Was it just a coincidence that Iran released the hostages the day he took office? Why weren't the Iranians afraid of Jimmy Carter? It's funny, Richard Pryor has a routine about when Ronald Reagan came into office. He said Jimmy Carter was in office, and he would say to the Russians, I feel your pain. I want to understand you. I want to try to make sure I understand what makes you tick. And Richard Pryor said Ronald Reagan came in and said, these Russians are lying, cheating SOBs. And the Russians said, let's talk. People weren't afraid of Jimmy Carter because they thought of him as a wuss. Jimmy Carter was the guy that said that we should get over our inordinate fear of communism when he was running for president back in 1976. He ran against Gerald Ford. And one of his platform planks was that communism is not all that bad, and we are really jumpy and almost hysterical for fearing communism, and we should lighten up. And he said that we ought to get over our, quote, inordinate fear of communism, end of quote. And I remember he kissed Leonid Brezhnev on the cheek as a gesture of friendship. And within weeks, Jimmy Carter was shocked because Leonid Brezhnev invaded Afghanistan. Okay. Larry, do you find it sad that when you talk about the message of self-reliance, that people brand you as uncaring? Isn't teaching and encouraging self-reliance the best way to help your fellow man? Isaac, it is a problem. It's a problem of packaging, isn't it? And from day one, when I've been on the air, I have been called uncaring, and name the thing that government does that can be done better than the private sector, and I will concede to you government should be doing it, but I defy you to find that. You won't be able to. So this is a small little thing you're asking me. Does it bother me that people don't get the message of self-reliance? It bothers me people don't get the message of Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. It bothers me people don't understand that when you leave money in the pockets of people, they can better spend that money in all sorts of ways. I don't just mean inventing and investing. I'm talking about humanity. The likelihood of a dollar being donated to somebody in your neighborhood doing some good is greater than the dollar that government spends on welfare at the Washington, D.C. level. So don't get me started on stuff that bothers me. Again, tell your friends, LarryElder.com, and every new El Dorado gets a free copy of my DVD, Michael and Me, where it's a feature-length documentary. It's a movie where we try and track Michael Moore and ask him 3 times how often Americans use guns to defend themselves. I hope you enjoyed this small excerpt. If you want to see the full video, got to be in El Dorado. Go to my website, LarryElder.com, log in, fill out the form. It'll cost you about $4.75 a month, or about the price of a mocha frappuccino latte at your favorite coffee house. As you can tell, I don't like coffee. I'm a tea drinker. See you next time.